We've walked into homes that were, noted as turnkey. Even though a home seems like a good fit, there's just so many things that could be unreasonable and not what you're looking for as a client.
Don't be afraid to interview your agent that you're about to work with. Things come up.
Welcome to the wonderful world of real estate, the show where we pull back the curtain on all things real estate to showcase what really happens in the real estate world.
If you ever bought a home, sold a home, you're renting, or simply wondered what goes on beyond those sold over asking sign, this show is for you.
Real estate can be emotional, it can be exciting, it can be a little bit of a roller coaster, and ultimately it can be downright confusing.
And while social media shows you the highlighted reel, we're here to give you the full story of real estate.
Over the coming episodes, we'll be joined by people like mortgage agents, lawyers, contractors, and investors, and other industry professionals to showcase how the real estate world really goes around.
But before we bring in the experts, we thought we would start off by answering one question.
What does a realtor actually do? I guess before we jump into that, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Camille Seguin.
And my name is Anita Sandy.
And we are real estate agents. All right, so let's get into what realtors actually do.
Yeah. So most people see the open houses, the listing photos, the home tours, or they see what those reality shows glamorize realtors and what our lifestyle actually is.
Yes, what you guys don't see, negotiations, financial issues, inspector discrepancies, legal paperwork, emotional family decisions, and so much more. The bottom line is that real estate is more than just showing houses, and exactly what you said, it's more than what those HGTV shows, although they're great, they don't showcase everything. Those are mostly about the renovations and not kind of like that nitty-gritty that get the transaction closed.
Exactly. The reality is deals do fall apart. Some real estate transactions are very complicated and some go really smoothly, right?
The first step to any of that is really the representation paperwork. So in order for us to get started, before we share any stories or deep dive into anything like that, that's the first step. It's centered around due diligence and legal requirements, a representation agreement. So in order for us to properly do our jobs, this needs to be in place so that we can actually represent you and protect your best interests. Depending on the transaction, this can range from anything from verifying that you have enough funds for a realistic pathway for a purchase to reviewing your mortgage statement to ensure that you have enough funds to close. When we're working with buyers specifically, since we're kind of in a buyer's market, we could probably dive into that a bit more. You want to start talking about what it's like to work with buyers and what those first steps are like after they get that representation agreement signed?
Yeah, it's important to know that everything doesn't look the same for every buyer that you come in contact with. It's important to work with a real estate agent that really customizes things specifically to you, right? So for example, if we're working with a buyer who is going into a neighborhood or a new city or town that they're very unfamiliar with, what I love that we do is something called a neighborhood tour. So what's a neighborhood tour? So a neighborhood tour is one of those features that I love, and we take our buyers out into the neighborhood after we find out exactly what it is that you're looking for. So for example, if schools are a priority for you and you want your children in a top ranking school in Markham or in Pickering, we're going to look at those school zones and find what houses are within your parameters to get that top ranking school. Or if it's important for you to be in a neighborhood that has a great church, or you want to be in a neighborhood that has a lot of children, or that you could get a block party and a barbecue, then what we do is we take you out, we drive you around into those neighborhoods, and we usually book a couple of homes so you can see if I'm in the top ranking school district, this is one or two houses that I can get, right? So you can see the difference. So I think as an agent, it's very important to make sure that you're sending properties specific to your clients and not just inundating them with a lot of homes that aren't going to work at all, right? Another thing that we do for a lot of our buyers that it's beneficial for you is that we preview homes before you even go out and see it. Because a lot of time pictures lie. When you go and you see it on MLS and Realtor.com and then you go in person, you think it's like catfished, essentially, for what you're actually seeing. So I love that we do that added, level of care to preview properties before you go yourself, right?
Yeah, especially since no two areas are alike, right? Like we've gone into places like, oh my gosh, Belleville and Quinte West. And even just between those two, like even though they're kind of seen as like a very similar area, just in between those two areas, very, very different demographic, very, very different style of homes. We've walked into homes that were, noted as turnkey. That's our favorite. Yeah. And then you walk in and exactly what she said, it's a bit of a catfish. There's a smell, there's some textures, like, outside of what we were expecting, and the home is just not ready, or at least not turnkey ready by our standards or for our client standards. And ultimately what we do is once we do find those homes that kind of fit your criteria, it's our job to build rapport with the agents.
Yes.
Right? That's kind of the part that you don't get to see or even really hear about. We want the full story. And the full story is definitely not in the listing at all. Anything that they're able to legally disclose to us, we get them to share because sometimes it's not a good fit. Even though a home seems like a good fit, maybe the terms are unreasonable, maybe the price is unreasonable, maybe the closing, like there's just so many things that could be unreasonable and not, what you're looking for as a client. And, part of how we're able to get to your needs and determine your needs is knowing our client. That is a FINTRAC requirement. So KYC kind of has two sides. From a FINTRAC perspective, it is knowing who you are, how much money you make, where the funds are coming from, and stuff like that. But from a building rapport and just really knowing your client from a sales standpoint, it's getting in touch with what it is you're looking for, as Anita was highlighting before. Part of the reason why we want to make sure that we're doing KYC on both sides, especially when it comes to FINTRAC, is because we need to know what you qualify for from a budget perspective. I'm going to ask a question and I want you to answer. Does it make sense to show you homes that are listed at $1.3 million if you are only approved for $975,000?
No.
Thank you, right? So that's the main reason. We don't want you to fall in love with a home and, not be able to qualify for it. And sometimes, there's a lot of information online. Buyers kind of do this to themselves a little bit, unfortunately, where they'll be scrolling through homes on Realtor.ca or whatever, and then they'll send them to us, in very, very early stages of communication and say like, hey, I want to go see this home. If there's no pre-approval to support that you can qualify for that home, we are not going to be able to take you out to that home.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line. We can't skip steps. You need a pre-approval, and if for whatever reason you can't get one or you don't have one or you're not sure what to do, then we'll help you out with that.
Yeah. And to kind of highlight on that, that is the very first step for you as a buyer. You'll find your agent that you want to work with, and then from there you have to get pre-approved, right? That's a very, very first step. A lot of times we have in our mind, we're making six figures or we're making $80,000, so we should qualify for this. But in reality, maybe you could qualify for more than what you thought it was, or maybe you qualify for less. So that is the very first step that you have to do. We do not take you out to see any homes until you get that pre-approval. It's so crucial, right? As agents and, both Camille and I, we like to make sure that we're always negotiating with a position of strength. And in order to negotiate in your best interest and be in that position of strength, we have to know the parameters of it. What does that number look like? So that helps us secure you your home at the end of the day.
And on that note, we're going to head over to commercial and we'll be right back to talk about myths in real estate. Welcome back. So we are going to jump in some myths that you guys hear in real estate, and we hear them too. So the first myth, one of my personal favorites, I don't need a realtor because everything is online. I couldn't even get through that without laughing. I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to be rude. It's just, there's a huge difference between information and expertise. I completely agree. A lot of things are online. Everything is online. Maybe too much information is online. But how do you differentiate and even discern what's for you, what you're supposed to know versus noise? Because not all headlines, majority of headlines, to be honest with you, don't apply to majority of buyers or sellers. So you really have to, that's why working with real estate is important, is because you really have to know what you're talking about. This is something that Anita and I do on a daily basis. We eat, breathe, sleep real estate. And if you spend just a few minutes with us, you'll know. You'll know instantly that this is what we do full time, how we feed our families, okay? So I think that's the biggest thing, is information versus expertise. My other favorite part of this is, market interpretation, just going along the same vein of headlines. A lot of people get their market interpretation from these headlines, and they'll tell me how the market is going, which every professional loves to hear. I don't care if you're in real estate, accounting, whatever. It's always interesting when a non-professional who doesn't do this every day tells you how things are going in your industry. Again, just based on headlines and things of that nature, social media, reels, whatever the case may be. My favorite question is, how's the markets going?
Yes.
Right, that's a very, very common one that comes up from strangers even, like just people that you meet. And there's nothing wrong with that question, but let me just kind of break down for you how difficult it is to even answer that question when you're not a professional.
Yeah, it's a loaded question, 100%.
Very loaded. So, are you talking about the condo market? Are you talking about resale market? Are you talking about freehold market? And, let's just use the condo market as an example. One of my favorite streets, as you know, in Markham is Highway 7. So if we look at Warden and Highway 7, we have a series of condos there that was built fairly recently in the last few years. And then if you go over by Markville Mall over at McCowan and Highway 7, we have another set of condos that was built circa 1987, Tridel build. One is those ones are significantly larger, different demographic, high maintenance fees, but highly, highly, highly sought after in a lot of scenarios going into multiple offer situations. Those ones are listed anywhere right now for about 1,200 square feet. They were listed about $700,000 to well over $1 million. And if you go to Warden and Highway 7, not too long ago, they were listed significantly lower. They're also half the size. There's also a lot more for sale in those buildings because the demand is very, very different compared to, 5 minutes east of that location. So it really depends. Like, you have to really know the business. You have to know the industry, and you can't do that. You can't answer that question honestly without being in it 24/7. We're constantly talking to buyers. We're constantly talking to sellers. We're constantly reading information. We're constantly learning information, and we're constantly watching the market, like an unhealthy amount, some might say, but it
Obsessive.
works. Yes, a little bit, just a little bit. And just going into the buy and sell of it all, negotiation strategy.
Yeah.
If you are not represented, because we've seen this scenario before, we've heard of this scenario before a lot, and I'm sure you have too, where you have a seller who's selling their house. They have their agent, it's listed, the whole nine. And then you have a buyer come along now, unrepresented, and is now working with that realtor, the seller's realtor. I want you to take that in. It's the seller's realtor. Whose best interest do they have in mind? Whose best interest is the priority? The seller, right? They are not able to represent you unless you've agreed to multiple representation, in which case, again, they are not really representing you, because that changes how they're able to move forward with their client, right? So more than likely, you are a self-represented party with no one negotiating on your behalf, not knowing what to look for, what might be missing in an agreement, because as simple as some of these terms might be, sometimes one word is all it takes to lock you in to something that you probably weren't even privy to begin with.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the buyer's mentality is, if they're not working with the agent, that the seller has savings. So that's a benefit for the seller. But the reality is that listing agent is going to do, like Camille said, a multiple representation, and they're double ending the deal. So they're getting paid on both sides, right? And they have no due diligence or responsibility for you at all. I have seen some of the cleanest offers ever when people go through multiple representation and let the listing agent do it. And then they're in a horrible situation asking for help after the fact. Like, we can't help you at that point, right? You're already in a legal binding situation, right? So you always want to make sure that someone's going to be out for your best interests, and representation matters so much. I can't stress that out enough.
Absolutely.
Right? So many houses are at case-by-case basis. You can't just use the same clauses or the same wording on every single house that you put in an offer on. You have to tailor it to what's going on. So you need a professional that does this and understands what to look for when you're going into these houses and making offers, so that you are protected.
Absolutely. And between Anita and I, we have approximately 20 years of sales experience and negotiation experience between the two of us. Or sorry, 40 years, 20 years each, 40 years total. Well, short sold us.
You're aging us.
You're aging us. Oh, sorry.
Don't
my
be
gosh.
aging us here.
We have many years of experience, decades of experience between the two of us. So we are well equipped to support you in a multitude of different scenarios that we'll talk about over the season.
Yes.
You know, and the reality is, guys, like, if you are one of those buyers, maybe you're listening right now and you're like, okay, I get it. I need someone to represent me. And maybe you're in the early stages of talking to a seller's agent and maybe putting an offer. Before the ink is dry, before you sign anything, you absolutely have the right to change your mind and seek a realtor's help to represent you. Okay? And for more information, you know, we're not here to solicit to anyone who's already under contract.
No.
Just want to throw that out there. Okay. But the RICO information guide explains all of this in great detail. It's a great document that was introduced circa December 2023 to really help consumers understand the nature of what could happen in a real estate transaction. So it explains multiple representation, it explains being a self-represented party, and outlines those risks. And of course, that's something that we go through with you as well when we're onboarding.
Yeah.
So.
And as a buyer, don't be afraid to interview your agent that you're about to work with. Why is it any different from when you're selling a house? Usually when you're selling a house, you know, an agent comes in and they try and sell themselves. Like, I should have this listing because this is what I could bring to the table. You can do the same thing as a buyer, especially under today's conditions where it is a buyer's market. You want to make sure you're working with somebody that can get you your dream home, right? So don't be afraid to ask questions, see if they're well diverse in different scenarios, because things come up and you want to make sure that your realtor is able to handle everything, right? So experience matters, representation matters, it matters. I can't stress that out enough.
And that is such an important point, and it's great for us to close off this segment. We're going to cut here, go to break, and in just a few moments, we'll be back to talk about another myth.
Yes.
We're back again, and we're going to head right into myth number 3, which I know for a fact is Anita's favorite myth.
It is.
The highest offer always wins.
I absolutely love this. I really do. The highest offer always wins is so untrue. The highest offer does not always win at all. You know, we've been in so many multiple offer situations for this year, and we have won every single one of those multiple offers, but we have not had the highest offer in all of them. There's so much things that come into play when you're dealing with multiple offers. Sometimes it could be your conditions, sometimes it could be your closing date, it could be financing, it could be your deposit, which I'm very indifferent when it comes to this deposit situation. If we were to break down deposits, industry standard is 5%. So what I mean by that is when you look at your deposit, typically sellers like to have 5% of whatever the purchase price is. That be your deposit. The reason why I say I'm very indifferent when it comes to deposits is because it matters, but it doesn't. And the reason why I say it matters, but it doesn't is because, yes, once you put in an offer on a house and it's accepted, you do have 24 hours legally to provide that deposit. That has to be done or the deal gets null and void. But the reason why I say it doesn't really matter is because the seller doesn't get that deposit right away. That deposit stays in trust. The purpose of the deposit is because you need consideration for a deal to be legal binding. So that consideration is the monetary. The reason why it doesn't really matter also is because, I mean, I've had a house for a client, they purchased a $1.3 million house and the deposit was only $10,000. The deposit just shows financial security. So if you're in a multiple offer situation and you want to show them, listen, it's going to get closed.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry. Then you're going more aggressively at the 5% or maybe a little bit more just to show that you're good, right? But there's different ways that we can, I like to say, we package you.
Yeah.
And what we mean by packaging you is just making sure that we're putting our best foot forward in how we're presenting you to the seller for them to accept your offer that you place on the house, right? So that could look very different. And your job of your realtor is to find out that motivation of the seller and the why of the seller, right? So maybe they've already purchased a house and they need a specific closing date and they care so much about that closing date because if they don't get it, then they have a lot more costs.
Exactly.
That's entailed to it, right? Multiple offer situations that we've won this year. I know we won a couple just from a letter.
Yeah.
And what the letter is you're just really explaining and introducing yourself to the seller and explaining why this house is so important to you, why you really want it, talk about your family, different synopses like that. And those go into really good for people that are selling estate homes, for example, right?
Yes.
Because they do care and it's a lot of emotional things tied to it. So situations like that, the letter could be really good. I've had sellers that don't care about the letter. Don't give me a sad story.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at it. I don't care about the letter. This is what I care about, right? So it's important as a realtor to find out exactly what's important and then tailoring the offer that we submit to that. So highest offer doesn't always win.
No. And, just kind of echoing our earlier point about building rapport, that's why it is so important to find representation, right?
Yeah.
The right representation, because representation matters. If you have an agent who, is more focused about numbers and doesn't know how to build rapport or is a little more aggressive, because, we do have different types of salespeople out there, it's probably not going to get the job done. Throwing money at the situation, believe it or not, in real estate does not always work.
Yeah.
That you don't know what a person's going to accept.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes people will call us and be like, hey, do you think your seller's going to accept this? That's not building rapport. You're asking us to disclose information that we can't disclose.
Yes.
We are legally not allowed to disclose that information.
Yeah.
You could ask me, why they're selling, and if I'm, permitted to share that information, then I can share that with you, right? But if you don't, again, if you don't have that rapport building, you won't get, to be able to put $10,000 down in a $1.3 million house. We had a recent deal earlier in this year where, because we do work together, I built the rapport during the, showing phase. And then, when we handed it off for negotiations to Anita, she continued that rapport. We got in really, really deep with this agent.
Yes.
And not to kind of give too much away, but the goal is to have everyone advocating for you. Because at the end of the day, both our client and the other agent's client, they have the same goal. So there's no need usually to fight.
Yeah.
And usually when you're cooperating with somebody, I don't mean that from a cooperating brokerage perspective, but I just mean when you're working with somebody, that gets the job done majority of the time. Whereas if you're aggressive and you're going in with an attitude or you're going in with some type of mentality, which may work again in some markets, but doesn't work majority of the time, I think you're going to get the job. I think there's a stat, 45% of the time, you'll get the job done. I'd rather not deal with 45% when I'm talking about the biggest asset of somebody's life.
Yeah. And so much of our interactions and everything boils down to trust. You know, when you're working with other agents on the other side, just as much as our clients have to trust us, we have to trust whatever the client or the agents are saying is actually factual, you know? If you're selling, we have to trust that the other agent actually did do their due diligence and got their client pre-approved and aren't putting in blind offers, because it happens.
Yep.
People put in offers without getting all their ducks in a row, right? So relationships and trust and building that rapport, everything matters, you know? Your reputation in real estate does matter with who you choose to work with, right? If you're working with somebody that, you know, their word is nothing, then that kind of ruins it for the next time that they come in and put an offer. You're second guessing them because of the past history that you've had, right? So all of these things are so crucial when you're working with a real estate professional, for sure.
Absolutely. And honestly, guys, we're not really covering it all today. That's really just a nutshell, synopsis of what it is like to work with a real estate agent. We can still talk more about buy side. We're going to be talking about the list side in future episodes and all the other things that come with that. We're talking about home inspections, money, like all the ways that a deal can fall apart, and all the ways that it can come together when things work, you know, even when there's a little bit of a hiccup. Even if it doesn't run smoothly, it's not the end of the world. Like, there's so much things that you can do to salvage stuff and make sure at the end of the day you have your dream home. But you just have to be adaptable and flexible and experienced enough to know how to tackle whatever comes through the door, right? Because I would love to say everything goes really well. It's like a walk in the park, but things do happen, right? There's so many people involved in a real estate purchase, you know, from your lawyer to your home inspector, you know, to your mortgage broker, even mortgage broker versus, you know, a mortgage representative at a bank. There's a big difference between working with your bank representative and working with a mortgage broker. And those are things that we're going to go a lot more in depth so you could kind of figure out what's the best route for you, right? Exactly. And, you know, I know we said a lot of information today. Hopefully you were taking notes, then you'll join us next week. These were just the first looks of what real estate looks like behind the scenes. So hopefully you come back next week and we'll be able to provide you with more knowledge, more information. Because once you understand the process, the easier it is for you to make a decision.
This is just the beginning. So coming up, we're going to speak to a lot more professionals and, you know, the lawyers and the mortgage brokers and everything. So you are going to be so knowledgeable so you would know what to expect in all your dealings with real estate.
Exactly. So thank you for joining us here in the wonderful world of real estate. See you next week, and don't forget to keep it real.
Bye.
Bye.